Marathon is in the news once again. Marathon, of course, the game by Bungie. Bungie, of course, the company or the studio behind Destiny 2. Bungie has had a weird time. Let's just say from 2019, things have been not good over at Bungie. In 2019, obviously, Bungie buys back all of their publishing rights from Activision, and we're told that, at least at the time, this is a brilliant thing, right? They're popping champagne in the office, they're cheering because they're finally free of just the disgusting people over at Activision. My apologies for interrupting your viewing experience, but I just quickly need to ask you if you wouldn't mind just subscribing to the channel. There's over 60% of you that aren't subscribed and watching. It would help a ton. So please, can you consider doing that? And also, head over to Patreon for a complete ad-free experience, and you'll be supporting the channel. Anyways, bye. If we fast forward a little to 2025, we very quickly find out that, oh, crap, their new game, Marathon, a game that we've been told going to be absolutely phenomenal. When it first came out and it first sort of had its reveal trailers and stuff, a lot of people, myself included, were, I think, rightly confused, right? The game seems to have no soul. It lacks any sort of clear direction. The art direction that they did take, while yes, it is a direction, and yes, technically it is art, doesn't really work. Not to mention the fact that some of it's just literally stolen from an actual artist that isn't very, very rich. And they ultimately, you guys remember this, right? The absolute meltdown that this was. This was the last time that the devs actually spoke to the player base, reached out and said, boys, oops, right? They spent basically an hour addressing this entire problem. Or I shouldn't say an hour, but about 20 minutes addressing the problem, sort of admitting it, at least kudos to them, admitting that they had made a mistake. Of course, throwing some random unnamed dev that no longer works at the company under the bus, which could literally mean nothing, or it could actually be true. Who knows, right? But fundamentally, this is the last time they would actually speak to the community until yesterday. Came out with a statement. The statement reads as follows. Thank you not only for your passionate feedback around the Marathon reveal and alpha playtest, but also for your patience while we took the time to listen closely and chart our next steps. It's super important that everyone understands this game did not launch to fanfare. The sort of beta that was put out was heavily criticized because, well, it just felt empty and bland. The trailers were heavily criticized because it just felt empty and bland. So I even said at the time that Marathon sort of strikes me as a game that was made with the explicit purpose of not offending anyone. And they kind of didn't nail that because the game just offended everyone for looking crap. But okay, though every comment in real-time conversation on social media and Discord through your voice has been strong and clear. We've taken this to heart, and we know we need more time to craft Marathon into the game that truly reflects your passion. After much discussion with our game devs, with our dev team, we've made the decision to delay to the September 23rd release. They don't actually go into when the game may actually be released. They do say that some of the stuff that they're immediately going to be focusing on is upping the survival game, more challenging and engaging AI encounters, more rewarding runs, and new types of loot and dynamic events, making combat more tense and strategic, doubling down on the Marathon universe, increased visual fidelity, more narrative and environmental storytelling to discover and interact with, a darker tone that delivers on the themes of the original trilogy. This is one of the things that, as I said, it feels like a game that doesn't want to offend anyone and it ends up just offending everyone because it doesn't fit what the original trilogy was all about. It doesn't fit the universe or the world that they think they want to go for. It just ends up looking a little silly, and in no way, shape, or form does it feel like I can actually connect with any of the characters on the screen. And then they're also adding more social experience, a better player experience for solo duos, and proximity chat. Remember, they said that they will not add proximity chat because it's toxic, and they don't want toxic players in the game. Turns out that they're finally learning. An interesting thing to note is that while Marathon absolutely tweeted this out, Bungie did not. They did not even retweet this update to let players know that, hey, the game isn't going to be coming out now. So it sort of feels a little awkward here. It feels like Bungie is kind of distancing themselves at the moment from this entire dumpster fire and just going, hey, let's try and contain this at least. because it's not like people were overwhelmingly excited for it anyways. It really did fail to sort of land. And I think one of the arguments, now it should be made clear, this is not the only thing. And I think a lot of times we on the anti-woke make the mistake of wanting to boil everything down to sort of simplistic arguments, right? Oh, the game is woke and it's made by woke devs and therefore it failed. That's all true, right? And there are woke devs that's working on these games, and the game genuinely does feel like it's just a woke disaster. But, or at least it was made by people who genuinely tried not to offend anyone. So it sort of made everyone look bland, boring, and the same, which obviously doesn't really work for anyone at the end of the day, as is noted by the fact that they're delaying it. But it needs to be mentioned that this game, particularly, just from the gameplay that I've seen of it, had way more problems than just being bland and boring. The gameplay was really not good. The world design really didn't feel intuitive to me. And in many ways, it's trying to be a sort of Tarkov, Escape from Tarkov, but it doesn't have the grittiness of the Escape from Tarkov games, right? It just ends up feeling a bit like an Overwatch parody, kind of leads to Overwatch, but Escape from Tarkov Overwatch, but also not even what made Overwatch good. Of course, Blizzard also doesn't remember what made it good. And I think what's very troubling to me as a player is that after this moment, right, after the Destiny devs cheered and popped champagne, breaking away from Activision Blizzard, things have not been going well. If you go over to the Destiny the Game subreddit, you'll find that most of the posts that actually still get upvoted posts from people who's complaining about the game, how good the game actually be. You look at the chart for Destiny, and you find that it's been really trending down for a while now. 25 didn't even crack 100. 26 couldn't even crack 80. And right now, we're at 60,000 peak players, and the last 24-hour peak is only 30,000 players. So the game is clearly struggling. So ignore the art theft, ignore the developer sort of meltdown and crash out, and the apology that wasn't really an apology, but more throwing other people under the bus. Bungie is in trouble. It doesn't seem like Bungie and the developers working at Bungie knows what to do. And I don't blame them particularly, especially for the sort of choices that they made around not trying to offend anyone. Remember that this game started development over 4 years ago. Since then, over 300 people have worked on this game. But even if we just look at the development cycle of this game, Bungie has seen massive layoffs, restructuring after restructuring. About 17% of its workforce has been let go over the course of those 4 years. So even the developers of this game are new, right? They're constantly seeing changes around the development structure, around the leadership structure. Even just listening to the game director, Joe Ziegler, it really doesn't seem like the developers at Bungie knows what they want Marathon to be, right? They want Marathon to be a player versus player experience versus, they don't want to replace Destiny 2, which is largely player versus environment. But even in that, they don't really nail the player versus player experience. Looking at all the gameplay and looking at people who actually had access to the beta, one of the things they all complain about is that the player versus player experience is not that good. It's not that fun. So it genuinely seems like 4 years ago, these developers started on a project. The idea was to make a game 4 years ago, right? In 2021, we're at the height of sort of wokeness, and companies have to be super careful not to offend anyone. And so Bungie sets out and they start making this game, only to realize in 2025 that the world has shifted significantly, and we're no longer in, this is no longer your grandma's 2021 era. We're in a new era where gamers no longer care about this woke stuff. Gamers no longer care about inclusion and all the rest of it. Gamers just want really good games, and good games need to be offensive. Otherwise, it's not good. And I think that's going to be Bungie's biggest problem. The delay, I think, is a good idea. I've never been against delays. I think delays are good. Go back to the drawing board, and especially when I look at the things they're going to be focusing on, it seems like these are the right things to focus on. These are the things that you have to focus on, because if you can get those well, Marathon may actually end up working, and more good games is going to be more better. I don't like Bungie as a company. I don't like them as a studio. I think they're greedy. They're bastards. Remember, this is the studio where the CEO famously showed employees his car collection only to fire them the next day. Right? So Bungie is not a great studio by any stretch of the imagination or by any sort of inkling of the imagination. But still, more games is always good, and I want to see better games. Let me know in the comment section down below how you feel of this. Do you think the delay is going to save the game or not? Hit the like if you liked, dislike if you didn't, and I will see all of you in the next one. Peace.